You only have one life to live, so get the most out of it. On Good Life, Great Life, join me, Brian Highfield, and my guests as we share success stories, habits, mindsets, and lessons learned by successful people. These lessons are not taught in schools, but are critical for getting ahead in life. Whether you want a successful business or career, optimal health, or a lifestyle that most people just dream of, Good Life, Great Life has you covered. After retiring from a successful corporate career in my 40s, I founded multi-million-dollar businesses in the sports and healthcare arenas. Now, I help everyday people maximize their lives and speak regularly at seminars, on podcasts, and radio shows to share principles on the topics of health, wealth, and happiness. Don't let a good life get in the way of a great life. Join me today on Good Life, Great Life.
Well, welcome to another episode of Good Life, Great Life. And today we have with us Whitney Hill. Whitney is the co-founder and CEO of Snap ADU. Welcome to the program, Whitney.
Thanks, Brian. Delighted to be here.
Awesome. Well, we want to get to know you a little bit. So can you describe just a little bit about your background and what led you to on the path to be an entrepreneur and ultimately the co-founder of Snap ADU?
Absolutely. I started out with about 10 years in corporate America in operations management, management consulting, always had the entrepreneurial spirit, but felt like I didn't know what I wanted to do yet. So tried to get a lot of general management experience. And along the way, found that I had a passion for real estate and design. So when I had the opportunity, I left consulting to start out on my own, doing real estate investing. Then got some exposure to general contracting through one of my business partners. Also moved out to California during this process around the same time that California was passing regulation changes that made it much easier to build an accessory dwelling unit, also known as an ADU or a granny flat, guest house, casita. And that's one of the solutions for the housing shortage that legislators have come up with. So it's much easier to build them. And as I was seeing this regulation happening, I knew that if that was no longer a hurdle, getting these things permitted, then the next bottleneck was going to be contracting capacity. So kept my eyes and ears open, came across a couple of folks talking in a coffee shop where I was, sitting doing my work on my existing business, heard somebody talking about ADUs and was thinking, oh man, I should go chat with them about this. Didn't muster up the courage to do it and they walked away. But half an hour later, I saw them walk back by. I was like, oh, this is my chance. I have to get up and do it. So made the introduction. One of those gentlemen introduced me to my now co-founder, Mike Moore, who had been a general contractor for a decade out here and had grown up in construction. So our skill sets merged really beautifully to create Snap ADU, where I was leading the business development and tech side, while Mike was building out our construction side. So we've grown into a $15 million business in about 2 years. We actually met the day before COVID. And we currently have 50 ADUs in progress in all across San Diego. All right.
So we got to satisfy people's curiosity at ADU. Kind of describe it as kind of that granny flat. So how does that all work? And how did the regulations change allow that to really proliferate there in the San Diego area?
An ADU can be built in the state of California on any residential property that has an existing primary home. And so these ADUs can be anywhere from 100 to 1,200 square feet. You can convert existing space like a garage, which actually makes a nice studio or one bedroom, or you can build, 2-story, 3-bedroom, 2-bath unit in the back that's as big as your main house. So the regulations reduce the lot size requirements. There's no lot size minimum. The setbacks were reduced to just 4 feet from that back and side property line, which means that a lot more properties can fit a unit on their property. And we see about half of our clients are building these for their family members, whether that's an aging relative or maybe a young adult who can't afford the housing market, so they can move into the ADU, or people are building them for rentals and supplementing their mortgage with it. So we see people using them for all different kinds of uses and then flexing that over time.
Wow. So then you said you were in corporate America for a while too, and so you had that entrepreneurial bug in you. But what were some of the things you were experiencing or maybe feeling that really said this corporate gig isn't for me?
I think for me, I was someone who always gave 110%. I don't have it in me to do, a C plus job,
Yeah.
which meant I was always working a lot. And there's often an upper limit on what you're going to see and what you're going to get out of that. So if I was going to work that hard and, put in that kind of time and effort, I wanted it to be something that I was super passionate about. And I did get to work on projects and work with people that were fantastic at Bain and Company. But at the end of the day, there was, enough in there that was not my jam
Yeah.
that I knew I needed to find something that I was passionate about. And I think that, once you find that, again, it sounds so cliche, but it doesn't feel like work when you enjoy it. And that's certainly how I feel about what I'm doing now. Even though I'm working a lot, it feels like what I want to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I experienced something similar because I felt, I was working for a small company and then I got bought by a much larger company. And then I just felt like I was a number. I wasn't really contributing anything there, even though they were paying me a lot of money. It's just, I didn't feel like I was making a difference. And that really, and the fact that I kept looking ahead saying, okay, I can either stay here for 40 to 50 years, or I can do something else that I'm more passionate about. So I think I had a similar experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also if you have a diverse skill set that you feel like you can't fully take advantage of, that can be another factor. So I found that, all the different experiences I'd had up to that point, even like running a singing group in college as a small business, like all those little pieces added up to now building Snap and knowing what needs to happen. So if you aren't sure what your own jam can be, there's so much value in working for best in class type companies where you can pick up that skill set and then later, you're off to the races and applying it.
Yeah. Talk about that moment again when so you saw your future partner and you're like, okay, now's my chance, and you say the conversation. I mean, there was some, I want to bring that up because I think there's a moment like that in all of us where we have an opportunity in front of us and fear gets in the way and we don't take action. We have regret, but you had the courage to go and say something right away and overcome that fear. Can you talk about that experience a little bit?
Absolutely. I think it's the mentality of what do I have to lose? What's the worst that can happen? And I am really an introvert by nature. So those situations always make me a little anxious. But recognizing that, everyone is faking it. Let's be real. Like no one is truly as expert as you imagine. And so once that gap feels narrower, I think it's also less intimidating. So just being able to walk in there and approach it knowing that like this person probably, felt like you did not that long ago, it can take down some of that barrier. And the other thing is not pretending to be an expert takes off some of the pressure. So being honest about, this is where I am, this is what my skills are, this is what I don't know how to do. That can help you get in touch with the people that you need to kind of bring that whole package together. And that's where with my partner, and it was actually that person in the coffee shop who introduced me to the partner. So that's the other thing. You never know where these conversations might lead. So you're expanding into their network too when you have those conversations. But I think being willing and ready to assess what you're great at and what you could use help with is important in thinking about who might be a good person to partner with.
Yeah, that's and you also bring up networking as kind of led to that, and that's so important for an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. And I was somebody who did not like networking. Again, the introvert thing, I feel like I didn't have a lot to add to the conversation. But once you start getting excited about a topic, it becomes much more natural. It doesn't feel like you're being forced to network or like you're even networking. It just feels like you're having an interesting conversation. And once I got to that point, these conversations became much more fluid.
Yeah. And I can totally identify as you're talking about people aren't the experts they are, because, one thing that I do and I teach people to do is because my field is healthcare and talking to doctors, and I'm not a doctor. I'm not a PhD or an MD, but we specialize in certain areas that we train these doctors, and it can be intimidating because they are a doctor. They've gone to medical school, but I keep reminding people like, more about this specific area than they do. They have general knowledge, but you are an expert in this, and encourage people to kind of overcome that fear, so I can overcome that fear, so I can really identify that. And it's funny you talk about being an introvert as well. Because I feel like I'm introverted, and some of the most successful entrepreneurs I personally know are the same way. What do you think? There's something to that?
Could be. I would say the introverts have maybe more time on their hands to go figure out what's going on behind the scenes because we're not necessarily gravitating to that group. So for me, it's always been like, oh, I'm going to dive into the data and really understand this. So I think there is something to be said for that. And then I also think it's about, like I said, finding the complementary type personality where, it might not be another introvert that's going to be the best match. I think I've made that mistake where I've tried to partner up with somebody who was almost too similar. And in that way, you don't really fill in the gaps. It's like you still have this blinding gap that you both are not good at. So that's kind of another thing I've learned over time. It's like getting comfortable operating with different personality types that can bring something to the table that you can't.
Yeah. So what do you think are some really traits that you have, or maybe you developed or learned that has helped you gain success as an entrepreneur?
Sure. I'll reiterate, being nerdy has been very helpful. Being willing to dive in to the tech, to the Excel, to really understanding the numbers when other people just won't do it or try to outsource it before they really know enough to get the right person in place to do it. That's been a huge part of the success. I would also say I have an integrative approach to looking at a problem, and that could be because of the 10 years spent looking at business strategy and operations and marketing and organizations. My brain automatically goes to how is this going to affect the broader company? So that I think helps kind of put things into context where you're not like missing the forest for the trees, so to speak. And I would also say that thinking of things in a collaborative way versus kind of the zero sum mentality that often businesses will fall into where, oh, we're, very secretive with our information. I don't want to talk to my competitors. I don't want to let them in on the secret sauce. We've really thrown that to the wind. We put all of our information on our website, pricing, floor plans, everything we've learned about the city and the regulations. And I've reached out to, 80% of the big players in this space, just have a conversation and figure out how we can help each other. Because frankly, if you're appropriately targeted in your niche as a company, there's so many different aspects here where you're not really competing full on with somebody else. You might have some dimensions in common and you don't really have to focus just on that, but focus on the pieces where you can help each other. Because there's almost always some play unless you're like truly identical. And again, that's just rare. And then I think the other thing is there's so much to be said for like networking, like we mentioned. You never know who they're going to introduce you to or what gap, they might help you fill. They happen to know somebody who's looking for a job. It's just led to so many amazing conversations by being open to talking to other people in the space.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting that you brought up collaboration, because I think that's a key concept that a lot of people miss as being an entrepreneur, because they feel like, okay, I'm starting this business, and like you said, you got to put walls up and you got to keep people out, and you actually succeed better when you collaborate with others.
Totally. And it's also like, it's easier. You're not worrying about, keeping this information close to the vest. It makes day to day less stressful to be open and honest. And in the end, I can't think of a single situation where I've regretted sharing information. It's always, either turned out well or just neutral. I've not had an experience where I was like, oh man, I shared too much.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you have a mentor along the way here, or maybe several mentors?
I would say so. I was fortunate to work for some incredible managers along the way. And some of those mentors just pushed me to look at things differently than I would have. Perhaps, again, more integrative, more expansive. I remember one of my first managers working at a supply company, which is where I went after college, doing kind of an operations management program, rotating through different departments. One of my first managers there, within a couple of weeks starting, and I'm like 22, he asked me, Whitney, what do you want to be remembered for after you leave McMaster-Carr? And at the time, that just felt so ridiculous that I could have some kind of an impact that anyone would even care. But from then on, I was looking at it differently. It made it seem possible that I might have that kind of an impact. Other mentors that I can think of then just pushed me to stretch beyond perhaps what was my comfort level, because I'm somebody who likes to really master something before I feel confident talking about it. So mentors who were able to put me out in front of a group, allow me to take the credit, put me on the spot to do that versus, keeping me in the back pocket to do the data crunching, but then they take the credit. I had some amazing managers who were comfortable enough to recognize the people to give them that say and bandwidth over their own work, that again, inspiring me to do more than I might have otherwise. So I think now that I have, employees working for us, I try to keep that in mind too. It's like, how can you unlock discretionary effort from your employees? How can you give them the responsibility, the tools, what they need to push the company further than you could by yourself, or that you could by micromanaging them? How do you unlock their potential so that you can all grow more than you would otherwise?
No, that's really great stuff. What tell me about? I want to understand or learn more about your lifestyle. And I say this because entrepreneurs are doing this because a lot of times because they want to have more control, more free time, more fulfillment in what they're doing and chasing their passion and things like that. So can you talk about how's your lifestyle changed when you made that shift from an employee to being a business owner?
Sure. I think I mentioned already, I would not say the hours went down.
Yeah.
I will still work the crazy weeks, hitting 60, 70 hours, but it's on my own terms. And I have two young children, they're 9 and 7. And I started, I kind of left corporate America when they were 2 and 4. So parenting was a huge thing, and I knew I needed flexibility around that. So I think having your own jam does allow you to create more of your own boundaries, your own rules. And so as we've built out Snap, so my partner Mike also has 3 young children. So very important for us that we would be able to go spend time with our families and have kind of off hours. At the same time, I would not say that work-life balance is something that I prescribe to. For me, it's more of an integrative experience because, again, like I said, I like work. A lot of my close friends are also somehow working in this space. I maybe met them through work, and that, we talk about work when we're hanging out. A lot of my closest friends are also in the space. So for me, it's like more of an integrative experience. I'm never really fully checked out. And I don't mind that though, because it gives me the freedom to walk away from my desk. Like, I might be on the road going to a national park, but I'm keeping up on whatever I need to because we've designed our company to be run remotely. So when again, we met the day before COVID. It was March, Friday the 13th, as they're shutting down America around us. Thank goodness we took that meeting. So we really built everything in that virtual mindset. And now as people have gone back, we've decided we don't need an office. We have 16 employees. We do not have an office space. We all work remotely because that was a value that was important to us. So I think it's about like being true to what matters and then setting those boundaries. So for instance, I turn down events. Like I'm not willing to go do in-person events on the weekends because that is when I try to, for the most part, just, to take big swaths of time where I'm just going to hang out with my kids. I'm not going to check email and I don't want to be tied to something like that. So I think it's about setting boundaries that you maybe couldn't before when you were beholden with a manager. That said, even for folks who haven't made the jump, I think we underestimate how we can set boundaries in the workplace, and we just don't because we're nervous about it. But people don't need to always know where you are. I had a manager tell me that in consulting. They're like, tell someone you have an appointment. They don't need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it's true. As long as you're getting your work done, I think you can get a lot more leeway there, whether you're working for yourself or someone else.
Awesome. So what's the next big thing for you and Snap ADU? What's really your focus, and where is that going to be in 5 years?
Yeah. So our focus right now is scaling to become the single biggest design build contractor in Southern California. And we're pretty much there is in San Diego. We want to be careful with our growth. We want to make sure that we've really mastered all of our processes, all the regulations, gotten really solid at what we're delivering before we try to expand. But we do see ourselves doubling each year from here on out. And we've built the foundation to do that. At times, when we were first starting out, we might have, in the beginning, we only had maybe 5 projects going. And it kind of felt like you were building a rocket launcher to like launch a paper airplane. Like, this is so much harder to do all this in the project management software. We could just do it over email or call. And so having that vision of what it's going to need to support down the road was something that we've been able to do. So now it's sort of like we've been laying this track. We're ready to like really see what we can do now that it's there. So we're trying to scale in a responsible way so that we can, help more people get these ADUs built. There's a target of building 500,000 dwelling units in California over the next 5 years.
Wow.
So there's just massive demand. There's enough business for everybody. We're also trying to help other companies along the way. We send clients and homeowners who we can't help over to other contractors or architects. So we still see ourselves as being, a leader in this field, not only as far as, volume and that sort of thing, but also just being a resource for other people.
Awesome. Good stuff. We're running out of time, but how can our audience get to know you a little bit more or connect with you and maybe they have questions about Snap ADU?
Our website is snapadu.com. We've got a lot of information there about our company, our team, ADUs in general, what it costs to build, plans. You can also check us out on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Just search for Snap ADU.
Awesome. Great stuff. Well, I appreciate your time, Whitney. So we've had with us today Whitney Hill, who's the co-founder and CEO of Snap ADU. And I took a lot of good notes here, a lot of good advice for anybody aspiring to be a small business owner or a large business owner, because it sounds like Whitney's on her way to really growing something really big there in California. That's awesome stuff. Thank you so much, Whitney, for being with us today.
Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Good Life, Great Life, brought to you by Brian Highfield. We hope you enjoyed listening to this week's guests and stories. If you like what you've heard, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts.